Alright, I want to look at Geometry A, Unit 1. One of the very first sections about transformations, it gives you a good summary here of how coordinates or how points change when they undergo a transformation. And this will help a lot with the unit activity in Task 1, the bottom two questions. So we're going to talk about translations, reflections, and rotations right now. So I'm going to give some examples of how to do this. If it is gonna load. Alright, here we go. Okay, so a translation. Now, what this notation over here, where's my mouse? Things are just going pretty slow. Okay, what this notation is saying is that a point xy, when it undergoes a translation of A to the right, and B up, this is what it looks like. So x, if you're going to be going to the right, you're going to be adding however much you went to the right. If you go to the left, we're going to be subtracting that number to the x value, okay? Now to the y, if you go up, you're going to be adding. If you go down, you're going to be subtracting. So an example of this, let's say we translate xy, and we want to go down to left 1. What we'll say is xy becomes now left 1, that's with the x, right here. Left means we're subtracting, and we're going 1, so minus 1. And the y, if we're going down to, that's right here, down means we're going to be subtracting. So this is our transformation. xy became x minus 1, y minus 2. Okay, let's go ahead and erase that. Let's do another example. If I want to go, let's see, up 7, right 3, then the point xy is going to change to be up we said was adding to the y, and right we said was adding to the x, and so it's going to be x plus 3 and y plus 7. Okay, so you got to remember the up, down, left, right, what we add and what we subtract to the x and y. Okay, so I'll write that again. Up, we're going to be adding to the y. Down, we're going to be subtracting the y. Right, we're going to be adding to the x, and left, we're going to be subtracting from the x. All right, now let's take a look at reflections. These are the two common ones that you're going to be using, reflect across the x-axis and reflect across the y-axis. So now all this is saying is that for the x-axis, the point that you have, so xy, it gets changed, so the x actually stays the same and the y becomes negative. Okay, so an example of this, say we have the point 3, 6. If we want to change that to reflect across the x-axis, well, the x just stays itself. It's just x still. So in this case, the 3 just stays itself. And the y, what happens is the sign changes. So now 6 becomes negative 6. Okay, another example, say we have negative 4, negative 3. That will change, the x stays the same, so we have negative 4, and the negative 3 changes sign, so it's going to be positive 3. Okay. Same thing with this one here, except the x is what the sign changes, and the y stays the same. Now let's look at a rotation for 90 degrees, and actually they should give you counterclockwise. Now, a little tip for this, 90 degrees clockwise is the same as 270 degrees counterclockwise, and 270 degrees clockwise is 90 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, so those are switched. So what this means is that if we're going to be going 90 degrees counterclockwise, what happens to the x and y? They first switch, the numbers switch, and then the y, the new one, becomes negative. So an example of this, say we have 5, 7, and it has a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation, because these are the same. what happens to this is that they first switch. So now we have 7, 5. And then this one, the sign changes. So it's going to be negative 7, 5. Okay? So now up here, 270 degrees counterclockwise. Say I give you the example of 10, 15. What happens here is they switch. So we have 15, 10. And then it's this one here that becomes negative. So, bink. There we go. Put the negative sign. Okay? 180 degrees, they switch and they both change signs. So let's do 10, 15 for this one. It becomes 15, 10, and they're both negative. Negative 15, negative 10 would be your answer. So that is how we do these here. So now if we're going to go ahead and look in the unit activity, right here, a translation of A unit to the right and B units up. Okay, remember to the right, we're adding on the X. And B units up, we're adding on the Y. So what we would say is XY becomes, so we're using A and B, not really numbers. It becomes X plus A units to the right, X plus A. B units up, so that's Y plus B. So this right here would be your answer. Reflection across the Y-axis, you're actually just going to look at what we just talked about because they just want to know what happens to X and Y. So you're going to say XY becomes, and then you're just going to look at the summary that we just looked at. Same for this one and this one. Actually, same for all of these. You're just going to look at that summary and write it down. So once again, that is this part here. You're just going to be writing down exactly what they have. Okay. So now when we talk about series of transformations, you're just going to do one at a time, exactly what we just looked at. So let's go ahead and look at this first one here. A rotation of 90 degrees counterclockwise, and then a reflection across the x-axis. So let's actually look back here. Rotation, 90 degrees counterclockwise, that was this one. And then a reflection. So we're going to say xy becomes negative yx. Okay, so we have negative yx. We're going to do it one at a time. So we're going to say xy, now this is question number 1, becomes negative yx for that first part, so we can cross that out. And then a reflection across the x-axis. So now we're starting off with negative yx, and that now is going to become, let's just look, a reflection across the x-axis. What's going to happen? Normally what happens to xy, the normal point xy after you reflect it across the x is that we get x negative y. Okay, so that's normally what happens. But instead of starting with xy, we're starting with this. But we're going to do the same thing. This coordinate stays and this one becomes negative. So now we're going to have negative y because that stays the same here to here. And then this one becomes negative, so we get negative x. So this right here is your final answer after that series of two things happening. So, but you're going to write it out like this. You're going to show each one at a time. So that's what you're going to do here and here. You're going to say first this happens and then this happens, okay? Hopefully this helps out with this activity.